that made first order of business, Candy, we just got within the last hour or so your document, Article 12, that you amended in some respects. Work responsibilities, we're not prepared to address that today. We will get it back to you at our next meeting, but we did get it. Or some of us got it.
Our intention was just to introduce that today. I mean, you have a full book proposal you sent us. We thought you'd want to.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Having said that, we'd like to start the meeting off with President Pickens, who has some remarks to make for everyone.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Jim. And we have 2 hours, and so what I'm going to start with is an abbreviated response to the timeline and comments that Clay laid out at the last meeting. And then, as I recall at that last meeting, the bargaining unit expressed a desire for us to go over all of our articles, and so we plan to transition from my comments into just that. And so, and then we want to reserve from a time certain of about 3:45 until 4 for the board attorney, who has asked for the opportunity to express some thoughts that he has gleaned from our executive sessions with the board. And so we expect that to consume all 2 hours, and we want to make sure that that is, you didn't ask for my comments, but I'm going to make them, but that what occurs after that is okay for the utilization of the time that we have today.
So my understanding of what you're saying is you will have some remarks, and then your team will present your full book proposal, and then the board attorney has some more remarks, and you think that'll take up the whole time?
I do.
Okay, I would just request a short breakout. Adam, maybe you could put my team in a breakout so I could see, because we had some things to present, but I want to consider what you're saying. That might be more productive. Adam, can you put us in a breakout?
Yeah, Candy, let me, before you go, let me also say that we have at least reserved. And so to whatever extent this helps or hinders your conversations, we reserved October the 9th from 1 to 4. Is that right? For the next time that we would meet. So if that is a time that you're available, it is a Friday, then, and that is information that is valuable to you as y'all caucus, then that's what we're also proposing.
And that's another Friday afternoon. So
2 weeks from today.
Fridays are good for us. Okay, we'll just take a short caucus, no more than 5 minutes.
Are we going back to our caucus, or are we going to just hang on?
It was from my understanding that we were not going to be doing.
Caucus, and we want to hear whatever your team wants to present today. So we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, did the October 9th work for y'all?
Yeah.
We can book that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Mr. President.
All right, Susan.
Are we waiting for something?
We are, sorry about that.
That's okay, just checking.
We're waiting for IT.
Oh, you have great IT so far.
Waiting for IT has gone from being a fact of, a part of life to a fact of life, I think, but yet they are good. You ready, Logan? Okay, first slide. So what we want to do is just take a few minutes, and we're not going to go through every slide. Again, this is an abbreviated version, and reply to what we heard last time. And this is what we heard. And frankly, it started with y'all's remarks to us through Clay, and then Clay sending those remarks to the board. And so this was the beginning of the email from Clay to the board. Next slide.
If we're supposed to see the slides, we do not.
Yep, you are.
Okay, so yeah, you gotta share screen.
I'm not seeing them either.
They're coming up. Thank you.
Okay, so there was no attempt to change any of the wording that Clay used and sent to the board. And so you should be familiar with them. And if there happens to be a difference, that's just simply a mistake or an omission in transcription, but there was no attempt to change them at all. But you can see what y'all said about the November collective bargaining process, and that you submitted a full proposal. And in our opinion, at that time, the proposal that was submitted failed to acknowledge that a collective bargaining agreement will encompass changes to existing processes. And that's what we always thought this process was going to be about, is how do we improve, not just how do we take what we like and leave it in. So the next slide, we wanted to go back to where we were before November, and that's all the way back to July. And Candy, you weren't with us during the period before that, but in the interest of time and in ultimately putting all this behind us, we didn't go back to July of 2017 and talk about, any more than I am right now, the year or so of acrimony and animosity. The Ed Kent year, as I'm going to refer to it, but in every communication we got, every public records request we got, every attempt that to us looked like we were being trying to be caught in something, even though there was nothing to be caught at. It was signed by a person representing the UFF organization committee. During that time, we just turned the other cheek and went about our business in the most professional and pleasant way I can imagine, while day by day and week by week absorbing insults and accusations and, frankly, acrimony. But it was a fact that on July 2018, this process started officially, and the organizing committee engaged in a campaign that the majority of the members voted for. And you'll remember that, notwithstanding what led up to this process, we did absolutely nothing but recognize the right of the faculty to organize and did not engage in an opposition campaign, unlike virtually every other college in the state. Next slide. So while a significant portion of the bargaining unit cast a no vote or didn't vote at all, we acknowledged that a majority of the faculty that voted chose to vote in favor of the union, and the union was certified on February 21st, and we prepared to negotiate. And we waited. And we even questioned why everybody was taking the summer off when we weren't. It wasn't until August of 2019 that UFF contacted the college representatives and proposed a date, and that date that was accepted was November 1st. So we're many months from February the 21st and a year and a half from, or 13 months from July of the previous year. And we acknowledge that we met in Orange Park, and at that time you presented a full contract proposal to the administration. Not that one was expected or that we'd had any discussions as to that how the process was going to go, but that's how it began. Next slide. When we met again in December, we offered tentative acceptance to Articles 1 and 2 and rejected the balance of the proposal. But then we offered a package of 7 articles for consideration. That's 9. That's a third of the contract. 5 weeks into negotiating, we had taken a position on the articles that were presented by the faculty, accepted 2, and offered counter proposals to 7. So we didn't think that it was particularly slow to take in chunks a third at a time, perhaps, the package that was submitted to us. But as you expressed to us and then expressed to the board, and as I state, the package was met by criticism, and specifically, you objected to how we were slow walking the process, next slide, and that we were capable of much more. Now, this is after we waited a year and a half from the beginning of the union movement to our second negotiating session, at which we offered a proposal that touched a third of the CBA, and we were only 6 weeks in. Next slide. In April, and we all know that a lot of things ensued, as I'll talk in between, including the Christmas break and a pandemic outbreak. We provided a CBA that was, Clay says, originally written for Tallahassee. And it didn't include a compensation plan for the faculty. And it was significantly different from St. John's River State's current rules and procedures, essentially starting the process over at step 1. Well, I thought, and we still feel as though, in response to your request, we submitted in kind a complete proposal that we thought was fair and in the best interest of the college. One that equally could have been accepted in the manner that the union suggested we could have accepted the one that they proposed back in November. Next slide. So our position is that in response to the criticism, we drafted a complete set of articles minus compensation. Interestingly, and I think importantly, in order to increase the probability the proposal would be accepted, a conscious effort was made to review collective bargaining agreements with the state, within the state system, and to pattern articles after those that had been agreed to by units represented by UFF at state colleges in Florida, and to the greatest extent possible recently. I have in front of me the book. This book contains, in addition to your proposal, at least 4, if not 5 other collective bargaining agreements from throughout the state, including TCC in Seminole and Palm Beach and Pensacola, and we looked at others. So I'm going to say more than once to suggest that all we had done was have Mr. Crosland cut and paste TCCs and send it back to you is an insult to all of the time and effort, hours spent by the bargaining team poring over all of these agreements, trying to come up with the best one for us and for our students and for the faculty. It's our expectation that when this agreement is signed, it's going to be the model by which all future colleges going through this process in Florida look to. What we aspired to back then, and it's still what we aspire to. Next slide. So using TCC's document as a template was intentional. This contract was ratified and renewed again this year by a sister institution with little change. TCC CBA, along with the articles adopted at other colleges, set forth the changes we could implement to either improve our existing policies or to provide additional provisions we have not yet implemented, which are all positive for the institution. We took this process that we didn't ask for, but we embrace as your right to improve the college and the articles upon which we are governed and we work in the most positive way. And rather than make things up, we again thought that we would scour hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of articles from sister colleges throughout the state, again, all of which had been approved by the UFF in order to move things along as quickly as possible. Next slide. Each article we presented has been thoroughly reviewed by our administration and tailored to work for our college. All of the provisions were written with an effort to be fair to the faculty and to the college. For us, serving students was the top priority in drafting the document, and our set of proposals minus compensation was dated April 17th and submitted to UFF for consideration. Next slide. And in the meantime, just by the way, we're in a pandemic and we've moved online. And we're trying to deal with all of the moving parts and uncertainties of being a month into the United States of America shutting down. The legislature is still in session, and the board was still 2 months away from adopting a budget, hence no ability to offer a compensation package, even in the absence of a pandemic. Next slide. In June, as Clay states, UFF presented recommendations to the Board of Trustees CBA draft and provided, as you say, a thorough and rationale for these changes. At the conclusion of the June meeting, Mr. Crosland, at my direction, proposed a meeting for July, at which time he suggested that the Board of Trustees team could present a compensation package. And that was our goal. Or we had met with the board the day before and had been rebuffed in our discussions with the board at that time simply because there wasn't enough certainty for them. Next slide. In the meantime, the pandemic had worsened. The long-term financial impacts had started to become apparent. The governor has still not signed the budget, and the board had rejected conceptual compensation package proposals due to COVID-19 budget circumstances. Next slide. On June 18th, UFF responded with revisions to our proposal, and again, we worked through all of them and responded with a revised proposal dated July the 21st. The changes that we made were made in good faith and in the process of continuing to bargain. They were all changes we could accept as in the best interest of all the parties, and again, with service to students as a top priority. Next slide. We offered a full contract proposal excluding compensation, which we thought was fair to the faculty in the best interest of the college. Next slide. It's also necessary to emphasize, as I think I already have, that when we entered negotiations prior to the pandemic, it was with great hope of offering a compensation article that would resolve ongoing issues of the faculty compensation, as well as competitiveness in the system. Once the pandemic occurred, and ultimately its significant impacts became apparent, offering such an article became a lot more difficult. And it became more difficult for the board as well. Even with these challenges, the administration continued to seek ways to offer compensation. We had lengthy discussions amongst ourselves and with the board in trying to draft something even in concept that the board would approve. Next slide. And in the meantime, the news just kept on coming. The governor informed us that all state agencies were subject to a 6% holdback, notwithstanding the fact that he had signed a budget and the $1.5 million specific appropriation we had received had been preserved it was immediately taken back in the form of a holdback. And we started to see fall enrollment projections begin to look significantly down. And once again, the board had balked at committing to a reoccurring compensation package given the circumstances. Each time we met with the board, and I'll note now and in the next slide, that we met with the board on June the 17th. We met with them on July the 15th, and there wasn't even a board meeting during that month. But we scheduled an executive session specifically to not have a long period of time go between our communicating with the board where we were and asking them for guidance, especially on a compensation package. And so we met with them on the 17th of June and the 15th of July and the 12th of August and on September the 16th. None of that's mentioned in Clay's recitation of what had occurred. And I think meeting with the board as often as we could in order to talk with them about where we were is a material omission. Next slide. Also omitted was the fact that despite the circumstances we were in, and mindful of the comment that we had authorized Mr. Crosland to make in June, I entered the negotiations for the first time personally to explain why we were unable to offer a compensation package in July as we had all hoped to. That's also omitted. And so I now have an understanding that, at least as expressed from the viewpoint of the faculty and the bargaining unit, my taking the time to personally explain to you why we couldn't offer a compensation package in July, even though we hoped to when we talked in June, and thus authorized Mr. Crosland to mention it, was not important. Next slide. So in September, the board's team presented the two memorandums of understanding, and the timeline was presented by Clay. Following a caucus and given Clay's comments, we thought that it was in everybody's best interest to take a break. And so we did. Next slide. Going forward, here is our position. We're going to continue to negotiate in good faith. And we're going to continue to communicate with the board regularly on how those communications are going to go. And we're going to continue to get feedback from the board, who ultimately has to sign off on this agreement. The personal insults to Mr. Crosland or anybody else are not going to be tolerated. Accusing us of having Mr. Crosland copy and paste, my words, not yours, the TCC agreement and handing it back to you are not fair or accurate. And they certainly are an insult to the bargaining team, who has spent just as much time as y'all have on our proposals as you have on yours, if not more. Easily hundreds of hours pouring over, as I've mentioned, no less than 5 CBA agreements, all of which include language that has been approved by UFF in Florida, and most of them recently. Next slide. It's obvious to us that UFF has entered into negotiations for a contract with unrealistic expectations concerning the process and our board's thought process. The administration has at all times bargained in good faith in an attempt to reach a contract. However, the UFF apparently does not appreciate that the administration has a legal right and obligation to put forth proposals which result in a fair agreement. Also protect the college's legitimate interest in providing our students and the public with an excellent education and the tools to ensure that our students are prepared for success and valuable careers. Next slide. And Clay talked finally about my speaking of the St. John's River State College family, and it's gotten back to me. The faculty don't feel like a family. Well, you know what? We're still a family. The fact that the faculty engaged in a process that you have a right to do that has caused stress on the family, Doesn't make us any less a family, just makes us a family under stress. And we're the only ones who can need to work through this. They also mentioned, and I really don't know that this is what he meant, but it's what he said, that we work quite well together, but I'm not sure that's going to be how this turns out in the end. My suggestion is that you follow our lead as we endured a year of Ed Kent representing the UFF. And never once did that reflect on our work product, on our demeanor, or on our doing our jobs, or in our relationships one-on-one with faculty. This process apparently is going to have more tension than perhaps either of us expected. But in the end, it's only going to be us that works it through. My bargaining team has mentioned to me on numerous occasions that they don't particularly need to be defended, and they can live with the insults that they have felt collectively and personally. I appreciate that. But I'm going to tell you that we are not sheep being led around by the great sheep herder, Mr. Crosland. We're all capable of independent thought, and the team that I put together are all accomplished educators in their own right. We have people on this team that have years of experience in negotiating collective bargaining agreements, and to suggest that we are just the puppets of Mr. Crosland is an insult to all of us, including me and the board. He's doing his job, and we're following his advice to the extent that we feel the need to, especially as it relates to the process. You had your say, and we've had ours. It's my hope that we start today and move forward with the same spirit of accomplishment and cooperation that we did when we were all thrust into pandemic reaction mode in March. A task that we all embraced, and one that we accomplished with incredible efficiency, all to the benefit of our students. We're not slow walking, but we are in a pandemic. My hope is that in October, we're able to offer a compensation package within the confines of the pandemic environment in which we are existing. Feel pretty confident that this time we won't have to explain why we couldn't do it. That's why I believe that listening to the proposals that we are going to make as far as the substantive issues, as I call them, is particularly important. Because by the 9th of October, at the end of the day, we're going to have a proposal that is 100% complete, and one that we can finish, or one that we can not. I do appreciate the time that you have given me today, and I'd ask that Melissa move into our presentation.
Thank you.
Melissa,
Yes.
before we do that, can we take about a 3 or 4 minute break?
Sure.
All right.
Andy? Yes. Break. We're going to take a 5-minute break. So let's come back at 2:45. Yeah, that sounds good.
Just stay in this one, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
is,
do you want to be on the record? We need a,
I'm sorry, Adam needs to start, right? Adam, are you there? Or an echo. Thanks, Adam. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. What we have today is our proposal. Susan's going to share her screen, and we also have available side by side your proposal. Should it be convenient to look at both of them? And so, just starting out, we know from past discussions. We have a tentative agreement on Articles 1 and 2. And so moving to Article 3, we had a question. First of all, we note that you changed your article to say, rather than colleagues will treat each other with respect and shall receive the same in return. We thought we would leave it with expect. If we do treat each other with respect, then the expectation is that we receive that in return. So I don't know how we can guarantee the receipt, but that is our proposal at this point in time. Next, we really had a question for the sentence that begins, therefore behavior that contributes to a hostile or humiliating environment, including but not limited to abusive language, intimidation, or retaliation will not be tolerated. And so we had a question as to why you would want that removed. And finally, in reviewing this article again, we believe that we can caucus and discuss removing paragraph 2. And then we'll update you after we have that discussion.
we would probably need to caucus about that. So why don't you keep going?
Okay.
In the interest of time.
Sure, no problem. So the next article is Article 4, and that is management rights. Our intention would be to include this inexhaustive list of management rights and a reservation of all rights vested in management by law. We really believe that this allows the reader to be informed of what these rights are, and that this document could then serve to educate those who are unfamiliar with management rights, or really the whole area of law. And so we really have not entertained any changes to this article. So that is our thoughts with respect to this one. The next article is Article 5, and that's union rights. So for paragraph 1, with respect to use of facilities, just like other groups who request use of facilities, the request process allows us to schedule such things as HVAC, security, and other necessary services. And if we do need to bring on additional security or custodial services because of the utilization during an off time, we would expect to recoup that expense. But for the most part, during normal operating hours, other than going through facilities use request process, we wouldn't really anticipate making any charge. But it's also always been our process to limit our risk and exposure, and so we would request that a blanket indemnification be provided, as well as insurance with an additional insured endorsement each year. Moving on to paragraph 2, with respect to access to information, and using your article, we could agree to provide at no expense to UFF the following documents. We would provide the college operating budget concurrent with a submission to the board, the complete agenda for each regular and special meeting of the board, excluding executive sessions. And those would, of course, include routine faculty personnel recommendations with supporting documents, concurrent with the submission of these agenda to the board. We would also provide minutes of each regular and special board meeting and board workshop, concurrent with the submission to the board, again with the exception of executive sessions. We would provide the annual financial report concurrent with submission to the Auditor General. And for fall and spring semester, 1 week before the first day of class, we would provide you with an updated list of bargaining unit members. Of course, with the information requested unless excluded under Chapter 119. We would also provide policies, procedures, handbooks, student handbooks, and amendments and changes thereto, concurrent with either publication to administrators or publication on our college website. And then with respect to paragraph 3, we can agree to put your initials first if that's important. We agree.
Yeah, that was housekeeping.
Yeah, no problem. Article 6 is dues checkoff. Lynn, were you doing that one or am I doing that one? Yeah. So we're gonna change the orientation of the camera so you can see Lynn as she presents Article 6. Probably just move that. I won't be able to see what it's doing.
Okay, Article 6 is dues checkoff. There aren't a lot of changes between the UFF version and ours. I will mention that in A, Part 3, there's something that the UFF put in called dues payer report. We really don't have anything called that, so we're going to call that a list that includes faculty members' names and dues paid, which we're already providing and we will continue to provide. It is being requested that it's in a spreadsheet format. The report that we're giving is off of our ERP system. It's not a spreadsheet format, but I believe it gives you the information you need, and we will continue to provide that. The only other changes, I believe, between the UFF version and our version is I believe it's the last one, deduction errors. Number 7, Roman numeral number 7. And this talks about what happens if we accidentally deduct dues from a faculty member's pay and getting it back on time. So we would get it back on time, but it all depends on if we have the money. If it's still with the union, we would need to get that money back before we give it back to the faculty members. And then the last one was number 2. It was B on your version at the bottom, UFF responsibilities.
Can you scroll down?
Yes, that one. I believe that got struck on your version and we'd like to keep that. So really, that's all number 6.
that again. So it'd be nice when we can get back together in person, so we can just rely on, we don't have to rely on so much on our wonderful IT team. So the next one is Article 7, which is no strike. For this article, we felt it was important to include more detail as to prohibited activities, which will give the reader a better understanding of what the parties can and can't do as it relates to this topic. And so yours is much shorter, and we really felt that it would be beneficial for all concerned to have a better understanding of this topic. For moving on to Article 8, which is the grievance and arbitration procedure. Beginning with the first paragraph, you had included, you wanted to include past practice. We really want to limit this grievance and arbitration procedure to provisions to alleged violations of this contract. So we really will need to have that, we will not include past practices in this grievance article. And we really need to have the specific provision of the contract referenced in any grievance filed pursuant to this Article 8. Moving on to the second paragraph, we have included that a decision by the college not to renew the contract of an employee on annual contract or not to award a continuing contract shall not be subject to a grievance pursuant to this article. And our position is that there is no expectation in law of the renewal of an annual contract or an award of a continuing contract. And so we would not build that expectation into a grievance procedure provided herein. Moving on to step 1, we would include language that mandates that facts pertaining to the grievance be included, not just allegations, and again, would not include the term past practice. Moving on to step 2, you mandate in your article that the vice president and the president shall conduct meetings with the grievant, and we really feel that the mandate of a meeting could in fact delay the process, and that a meeting would be called when appropriate and necessary to gather more information. So moving to your article on your page 14, you had inserted several paragraphs discussing the process. So there's some things in here that we've discussed and can agree to include. We will add the FMCS, Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services, as a source for arbitrators. We can also agree that the moving party can strike first when addressing the panel. We have not included that the moving party or that release time shall be granted to the grievant and to any witnesses. With respect to the arbitrator's decision being final and binding on the parties, we do agree to that. However, we would include language that recognizes that either party could seek review of the arbitrator's decision pursuant to Chapter 682 for the statute. I did have a question as to our paragraph 4. I think you struck that in your version, and it would seem to be that that would be a benefit to the bargaining unit. So we would question why would you strike that, or why would you want that struck? And I think those were the main points on that one. Jim, did you, in discussing this, do you have other things that we need to address?
I don't think so.
Oh, I did have one. I just remembered, Jim, on the time. At step 1, you changed 10 working days to 30 days. And we would offer a compromise of 20 calendar days. We really would worry that 30 working days would expand this process and could really limit our ability to resolve these issues, especially as we near the end of a term or go into summer. So that would be something that we would suggest changing 10 to 20 calendar days. And I think those were the main points on Article 8.
There was a change in the language regarding if there's an issue of arbitrability. I mean, we agree that that's a procedure, but our language is a little different on that. And I guess the other thing is that Candy struck out the provision that each party shall bear the expense of its own witnesses and representatives. I don't know why. Is that the normal thing, Candy?
Yeah, I'd have to take I don't know if this is, can you go to that section? Sometimes we only deleted things to do. I'll take a look.
That's just standard language.
Right. No, that's, I mean, we generally pay for our witnesses' expenses to split the cost of arbitration. There is a disagreement about splitting the cost of arbitration, like the arbitrator and if there is.
Well, I think on balance over time, for those employers that have, especially those that have a lot of arbitration, it's to both parties' advantage to split the cost. Some arbitrations cost $20,000-$30,000. Loser pays all is a kind of a scary proposition for both of us, in my opinion.
Right.
Anything else, Jen?
That you hit the highlights. You understand, Candy, that Melissa and others will be going over these articles with you, and then we will put our changes, these suggested modifications in writing,
That'd be very helpful.
Yeah, but we just wanted to go over it with you in the meeting today.
We can commit to coming back with some answers to your questions. I just don't want to do it on the fly.
Right, I understand. Same with me and Melissa.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so moving on then to Article 9. Looking at that, we can agree to delete the first sentence, but we insist that the last sentence remain in, which is, if the agreement is silent, the board rule or policy shall prevail. The next one is Article 10. So this one, Dr. Brown's going to present this one. Right.
Okay, hi everyone. So in Article 10, we actually took this from Palm Beach's CBA. We really liked the language here. None of us had written our current academic freedom policy, and we thought that this actually described more the craft of teaching and where that was engaged. If I contrast our version with your version, kind of in the middle of the screen, the sentence, bargaining unit members have the sole right and obligation. We added that word sole. That was your suggestion in your draft, so we did include that in there. And then we also, in your draft, and Susan, if you go to their page, you can see the first sentence that's underlined. Students may appeal their grade through the appeal process, which shall involve bargaining unit members. I'm actually going to, when we get to Article 12, share with you where I put that section in the section about grades. We didn't feel that it really belonged here in academic freedom, but we recognize the value of that statement and have, so I have it. I'll show you where where I recommend we plunk it down in the section on grades and grading. The second sentence that's underlined, academic and freedom includes the right to criticize decisions and actions. If you go back up, Susan, to our draft, you can see we took the intent of that sentence and then phrased it a little bit differently. If you go down to the line where collegiality is on the margin, faculty's academic freedom includes the right to constructively comment on college decisions and actions of the administration and district board of trustees. We felt that captured the intent, but perhaps was a little less wide open, and it focused in a more productive way, we thought. We did not include or remove the last sentence as was suggested, nor did we remove the sentence there that starts with nevertheless. And I would be interested, particularly that nevertheless sentence, nevertheless, bargaining unit members will not depart significantly from their respective areas of competence or divert substantial time to material and or discussions extraneous to the course. I would just be curious what topics extraneous to the course and outside of a faculty member's area of expertise we really felt that we needed to include within academic freedom. And maybe you guys could talk about that later with us a little bit. So those were we tried to incorporate two of the main points that I thought you were making there. And then I will show you in Article 12 where we're taking that piece about the grade appeals. Okay. In Article 11, that is also still me. So what I thought I would do is just kind of work through in our draft the suggestions that you made in your draft. Susan, if you go up just a little bit to see, there you go, Roman numeral, okay. So the very last C6, in the event that the hiring decision deviates from the committee's recommendation, the president shall provide feedback to the committee. That on your draft, if you went to the next page, kind of incorporates the input that you gave us in 6 and 7. Yeah, so, okay, well, anyway, so there, where you asked to, you struck 6, and then you added that sentence there in 7. We obviously have left what the 6, but we've added in incorporated into that your feedback there as it relates to providing feedback to you. Down as in appointments and orientation, here you had changed the number of hours of training that would be that new faculty would participate in. And when you look at how ours is articulated, it says annual contract faculty shall participate in pedagogical and discipline-specific training for up to 30 hours per semester for each year they are on annual contracts. I wanted to emphasize that up to. It's not as if there'll be a clock. Some people will do far less. Others may need a bit more mentoring and assistance that will be more time consuming. And then I added the next sentence to help kind of frame what we had in mind and what would be included in that. So included within these hours are department meetings, meetings with mentors, and participation in orientation, convocation, the Professional Development Institute, and other professional development. The goal there was, by adding that sentence, was to try to share and perhaps relieve your mind a little bit about the load that we were trying to dump there. If you think about the amount of time you already spent in the course of a semester doing some of those things, it's pretty standard. And that time does count as part of the college service hours as well. You had recommended that this only be for the first 2 years that people are on annual contracts. And we really need to have the ability to mentor faculty who do not yet have continuing contracts for up to this. Now, some faculty who perhaps have made a choice not to pursue continuing contracts, but are experts in their craft and may not need that. But again, it says up to, and we just need the freedom to be able to do that for those who may be struggling. If you go to B, Susan, if you go down to the, you can hear, again, continuing with orientation. So in part B, actually, if you could go to the next page so we can look at their version. Okay, so yeah, it's down at the bottom there. Thank you. So the college, you had added a sentence there at the bottom of B, a couple of sentences about assigning folks to multiple campuses in the same day, teaching online sections. So those are the two areas that you worked with there. If you go back to our version of B, Susan, you'll see that what we did is kind of move that to okay, I'm sorry, I've got a little piece of paper here. I'm trying to watch the screen and do this. So in B, we left that alone based on how we had it, and then included your content in a new C. So we just left what we had B previously there. And C is all new. Faculty will not be assigned to more than one campus on the same workday as part of their base teaching load. Exceptions may be necessary according to program needs. Full-time faculty will not, as a rule, be scheduled more than half-time online unless their programs or courses are marked as online hybrid programs, or enrollment trends or safety concerns dictate the need for additional or fewer online course sections. I think that if the pandemic taught us nothing else, it's that who knows what's going to happen, and we have to be nimble and able to react. I will say we do have programs that are hybrids, that are online. And when we hire faculty in those areas, we obviously need them to teach their full load as the program is intended to be delivered. We don't intend to assign faculty to more than one campus on the same work day as part of their base teaching load. There are occasions in workforce where that is necessary, though, and so that is why we included that statement about exceptions may be necessary because of a programmatic situation. There's not a full-time job on just one campus, and so we would need the person to be in multiple places and within a day, and that information is generally shared at hire. So those are the sorts of comments that we in there. And number 3, non-continuing contract faculty appointments. You don't need to go to their page. They had just, the UFF version had struck this section entirely. And what I wanted to do was to share and to kind of try to help clarify why we need this section, because it does serve a purpose. What I did is I added at the bottom examples of circumstances that would necessitate non-continuing contract faculty appointments include, but are not limited to, grant-funded positions, short-term full-time positions while a continuing contract faculty member is temporarily on long-term leave, and other circumstances as approved by the appropriate vice president. There are occasions where we have and where we potentially would want to hire a full-time faculty to assist the rest of the full-time faculty in really accomplishing their goals, but it is not going to be a permanent position. This is not intended to be a pathway to no continuing contract. It is for a very specific reason. And so that is why we had that included. And by the way, we have offered these positions free. This is not, would not be a new concept to SJR State. So we have done this. Okay, so moving on to annual and continuing contracts. One of the things that was fixed throughout the document that I'm not going to highlight each time was it had been marked each time. It just said academic advisor, and it's been changed to reflect senior academic advisor. We believe everywhere, but if we missed one, you know, we'll get that one. So that has been fixed throughout. Within that first paragraph under number 4, okay, I guess I changed. So you guys had added something. Okay, so all initial full-time appointments shall be annual contracts. And you had wanted to add about the number of years. But here we're talking about the initial appointment. And so we just kind of left that as it was. We're going to talk about the number of years that it takes to complete continuing contract throughout the body of it. But as you're relating to an initial appointment, that's referring to the first time of hire. In A, some of the faculty, the version originally said that faculty would be receive notice of non-renewal by June 1st. And that was for all faculty. And what we did in order to still, I think as a compromise, was we broke out the paragraph a little bit. So an individual whose 9-month or 10-month annual contract is not being recommended for renewal, we can do that by April 1st. The 12-month faculty whose contracts are on a different timeline, we use June 1st for that date to be more reflective of the time of the of when the contract will be ending. So yes, I think that's here. Yes, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Why would this process, like the date, the notice, you know, was this followed? Why would that process not be subject to the Chapter 447 right to a grievance challenge? What's the goal there?
I didn't hear the question. Would you repeat that, please?
So the next, the last sentence, non-renewal of an annual contract cannot be challenged through the grievance and termination procedure. But most of the time, when something like this is challenged, it's about notice. It's about the little that is in there, so that someone has the right to a certain amount of notice.
Would you like me to answer that, Dr. Brown?
Yes, please.
Under state regulations, annual contract personnel have no continued expectation of privacy after their contract and are not, legally at least, not entitled to a reason for non-renewal. Consistent with that legal position, it is our belief that annual contract personnel should not have the right to grieve or arbitrate their non-renewal. That's what the state law is.
That's not my understanding of the state law. You can still challenge that the collective bargaining process that would be right here, that you would have the April 1st date or the June 1st date, but the contract would be honored. And it's really just a matter of procedure, not why the non-renewal or the substance, but we can continue to discuss.
We'll talk, I'll make sure that I just highlighted that. It wasn't something that was originally marked on the version we received back from UFF. So I didn't even really reread that sentence, if you want to know the truth, all that closely. You know, we were focusing on the other elements, but I'll bring it up to Jim and Melissa when we're next discussing things. So is that okay if I go forward? Is everyone can? Okay. So going on to 4B, where we're kind of starting to talk about the continuing contract. At the top of our page, you had changed the 5 years to 4 years. And this time we're sticking with the 5 years. The 5 years in order to apply for continuing contract is what has been established in the State Board of Education rules and is the norm at the other Florida college system institutions. We've been kind of dodging that. And when we look back through, yes, this is 1 year longer before folks can apply, but it is meeting the intent of the statute, the state board rule. So as we're evaluating and reevaluating all our policies and procedures, it seems a good time to come in line with state board rule. If you go down a little bit, Susan, to D, where we start looking at the criteria for evaluating continuing contract. The faculty in Roman numeral 2, there used to be a whole bunch of other stuff. You know, it used to say currency and scope of disciplinary and knowledge shall be an integral component of continuing contract consideration and may be demonstrated by pursuing a whole bunch of other stuff. We just simply changed that to currency in and scope of disciplinary and knowledge. It more or less we actually truncated even more from what the faculty version had done. Then in Roman numeral 3, we accepted that recommendation there. Roman numeral 5, it said service to the community. And when you look at it, and that had been suggested to be removed. Really what we are talking about, we're not talking about community service there necessarily. We're talking about this section, service to the college community, as it's identified in Article 12, which we'll look at. That's actually the language, and it's the language on the rubric for continuing contract on our current rubric. It's the one, it remained as well after Clay worked on the appendices. So just by changing that to service to the college community, that incorporates teaching, grading, all that sorts of things. So we make that clarification there so it isn't confusing. In F, under Roman numeral, under little, the V there on F, the faculty version had added an extra sentence after, it says up to 3 additional faculty members may be invited to serve on the committee upon the request of the applicant. It was suggested that we add the additional faculty members shall be approved by the applicant. That's not something that we feel is appropriate. When we look at who all makes up this committee, there already are, and I recall when this was gone over previously that it's very administrator heavy, but there's a faculty member from the applicant's department, with curriculum or program oversight, that's a faculty member, and then there can be up to 3 additional. We're trying to, frankly, we have a hard time sometimes finding people to serve on committees and making these schedules work. So that's a piece of it, is the ability for us to actually practically, implement this in practice. Okay, down in paragraph G, in the middle of the paragraph, so there was the faculty version, it says, and will notify the eligible faculty member when they are eligible and should apply, is basically was the intent. It doesn't reflect it in this draft, but as I was working through this, it occurred to me, from our perspective, we already are notifying the applicant if the minimum, in the sentence, if the minimum qualifications have been met. The appropriate vice president will then appoint the continuing contract screening committee. That's how everyone's, you know, that's the alert that the it's beginning. But if we really want, after committee, we can add and notify the eligible faculty member. That seems reasonable to me, and it accomplished that goal. And really, that's how it's already happening. So I would suggest that we add that there. I have that one flagged too. So, okay, in part H, again, there was a recommendation that we change the minimum of 5 years to 4, and we're leaving that at 5 to be in keeping with the state board rule. In Roman numeral, there was a suggestion on the faculty draft that no later than 7 calendar days before the continuing contract committee meets with the applicants, its members shall provide notification in writing and with an electronic copy of any issues or concerns the committee may have. That is just not feasible in how these processes work. There's a short turnaround time, and we do our very best. However, I am aware that we just aren't going to be able to meet that, short of having the portfolios due far sooner, like before Christmas. So it would be very difficult for us to evaluate all the committee members to get through all of them that we have to address in most given years. So I did not include that. I couldn't think through a way to make it more feasible that didn't push, have faculty turning in the portfolios much sooner, which I did not think was something that the faculty would be excited about. They usually use that time to make it the document that it needs to be. If someone can think of a compromise there that makes it a manageable task for those of us who are on the committee, I'd be open to that, but this is not something we can implement. In part I, the faculty draft crossed off the decision of the president is final, and we're leaving that there. Part J is in the same vein. It was fully struck by the faculty. The trustees are not willing to give up final authority or talent there like that either.
And let me just jump in there for 2 seconds. And Candy, that's our position on those 2 pieces is consistent with what the law is, and for that matter, our management's rights laws. It is the right of the public employer to make hiring decisions. Until someone is hired, they're not in the bargaining.
This related to continuing contract, though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it's the same thing.
Okay.
No, I mean, due process when an annual contract is not renewed and during the continuing contract process, anything in the collective bargaining agreement should be subject to grievance and arbitration. It doesn't mean the subjective qualitative decision-making power, it means the process. And we will continue to maintain the public employees' rights, as you are broadening management rights, but trying to pin down management rights article. So we're not, that's an area that we'll need to keep discussing.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Barr.
Okay, thank you. So if you go to the next page, Susan, so in number 5, the faculty draft after licensure requirements, so this is to meet the needs of the college, faculty may be required to complete additional coursework or training. The faculty added at the expense of the college. The college has a procedure and often pays for this, but we do not feel confident that that would be the case in every scenario. An example that comes to my mind is we hired a faculty member for a position that only required a bachelor's degree. Curriculum changes at the state result in our not needing that position, and we can't pay for that person to get a master's degree so that they're eligible to continue to teach. And if they want to continue to teach, they're going to have to follow through in that area. So that's just one kind of, but it has happened. And so I think we need to not include that in there. And that was it for us for Article 11 in terms of highlighting the changes suggested by faculty. Article 12 is me again. As we look at Article 12, if you go to 10-month contract, the faculty had added in B right there, 1B, 10-month contract. On the faculty draft, the sentence, faculty on a 10-month contract shall be able to temporarily change to a 9-month contract without forfeiting their right to a 10-month contract.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yes.
And it doesn't matter to me, but since Candy has given us a U12 today, and new work responsibilities, and we haven't had a chance to review it, I'm just asking both Dr. Brown and Candy, do you want to postpone discussion of that until we have a chance to review their revised provision? It's fine with me to go ahead. It's just a thought.
So what is Candy, what is your preference? I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I don't know how substantial the changes.
You haven't seen what?
The other one, so.
Oh, you haven't, yeah. Well, if you want to go ahead with your thoughts, Dr. Brown, I think it would be helpful. But I just wanted to point out that there is a new one from the union that we haven't vetted yet.
So I might can answer that one, Melanie. At least we can kind of do some of it at the same time. So on that particular one that you're talking about, we have agreed to accept that.
To paragraph B there?
Paragraph B, yes.
Okay, perfect. Next page. And I have a, you know, I'm looking at the clock. We're not going to get through everything today, so maybe I should just wait and do your. Why don't we skip Article 12 so we don't?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good idea. Let's skip ahead to 13, and then yeah. So in Article 13, the first page, there were no changes. On page 14, the faculty version crossed through the non-discrimination statement. That's really something that we need to have there. I was confused why that was struck. The timeline for grading assessments was also struck, and that is a piece that, as we looked through other institutions' collective bargaining agreements, pretty much all of them had some sort of inclusion related to that. And when I think back to grade appeals and just all different sorts of feedback we receive from students, this is an area where I think providing some expectation helps both the students and the faculty. We're not saying exactly what the timeline is, but I think if we're going to put out there, you know, if you turn in a major assignment, if they're not going to get it back the next class meeting, let's tell them that. Are we returning major assignments within a week, within, I mean, if it's a research paper, you know, 2 weeks, we do have to get them back at some point. And by establishing a framework, we can, you know, help ourselves a lot. Further under course calendar, topics reading to be covered each class meeting was struck. I would, you know, perhaps we would change it to each week / class meeting to kind of get it into a frame. But if we don't have any sort of schedule there, it becomes challenging for students to use the syllabus as a tool for if they miss class or things like that. In F, under assessment, we had tests, major assignments, etc., and we added the major there. And then we added, because of continuing problems there, we just thought we'd clarify that assignment and exams should not be due on holidays, days the college observes as a holiday, or during breaks, because that has been continually problematic, and folks seem to be surprised that that's not the college policy. In B, and B, there, it was struck through that they didn't, about the departmental template. And so we kind of put that back in there. That's not sure why, if we agree to the elements, why we can't, you know, start having use of a template where that information is pre-populated. And C, by the end of the first class meeting, is what faculty had recommended we change that to. We really need to keep it to be by the end of the first day of a semester or session. And the reason is students log on to Canvas and they expect to see their course content there, or at least their syllabus. And if there's the very first day of the term, when Canvas becomes available, the students pop into all of their sections. And when there's nothing in the class that they're not going to go to until Tuesday, they panic and assume that they've done something wrong and begin calling every phone number they can find, except the faculty members, to find out what happened. Am I not in the right class? I didn't get in there. And we need those syllabi to be uploaded by the first day of the semester so that students know, oh yes, I'm registered, I'm okay. This is the book I should be ordering and making sure that I have. So having that content.
Let me ask you this, Melanie. What are you calling the first day of the semester? The first day we return to work? Like whatever, August 14th or whatever? I'm just making that day up.
The first day of that, when you look at the academic calendar, it says classes begin.
Okay, so that's what we're calling the first day of class.
Okay, but what I'm saying, that Monday, the day that classes begin, if your class is Wednesday night.
Right, you still got to have it on Monday.
Correct.
Yeah, so we could just define that somewhere.
Okay.
As opposed to, again, so we're thinking like the first day to faculty return, like faculty return to work report, or that's what we call it.
One of the purpose of those days is for you to prepare your materials and get them uploaded.
Yeah, but the way we're reading it is it's the first day we show up for work. That should already be done.
No. So, okay, so I'll flag that and play with the language too.
There you go. That also shows up in Article 12 as well.
It does, and in the distance learning article.
Right.
So, right. Okay. And that's it for that. Speaking of the distance learning article, welcome to the distance learning article, Article 14. So here, down at, if you go up a little bit, Susan, 3D, so this is probably for Jim and Melissa actually. So 3D, the faculty version struck that an online course is the property of the college and as such will be held in repository for other qualified faculty to utilize. We are leaving that in there. In Article E, I'm going to do both of these and then I don't. So in Article E, the faculty added, with the faculty member's permission, the college may enter or monitor faculty course shells and or third-party or publisher sites used for instructional purposes. We struck that part about the faculty member's permission. There are times that we have to, I would say 95% of the time it has nothing to do with us just snooping around, but this is an emergency. The faculty member, we need to pop in there and do something as it relates to instruction to get the course going. We need to pop in there and publish it because it didn't get published, or do different sorts of things. And and sometimes we can't reach the faculty member, which is why we're popping in there in the first place. So I'm not quite sure what else to say about those. Along the same.
May I ask a question about D, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So when it says an online course is the property of the college and shall be held in a repository for others to utilize, I'm a little bit concerned about intellectual property. So say, for example, any one of us uploads into our online Canvas shell all kinds of items that we have worked on and developed over many, many years, be it, me with Spanish or Matt with, music. So we put it up there for the use of our students for the semester, but those things that we worked on for years before we even started working at SJR State, all of a sudden SJR State is going to own. Am I reading that correctly?
So
I think you ought to wait until a review of the intellectual property article. Ours is much more extensive than the UFF proposal. It might can be better discussed there.
Okay, no, if that's covered elsewhere, that's fine.
Okay, so class size, throughout the document, so the faculty added the same language that was changed in Article 12, which we skipped, about setting class size limits at 30 for, I think it said everything except science at 24. And that's not a current rule, policy, or procedure, or even consistent practice. So I've been told repeatedly that determination of class size is at the discretion of a college, and that's what it currently is. And so we're just leaving that. Here it says for distance learning classes, and in other places it says, class size period. And that is the statement that we're using as it relates to class size. I would think that people would be cognizant of our practice as an institution, and even as it's related to COVID, how we have worked to ensure that the appropriate number of students are in classes to serve student need, and also maximize the instructional environment. But ultimately, class size is the discretion of the college. So on the next page, for distance learning teaching assignment, number 5. Okay, so the faculty version had crossed off the last sentence under number 5, success and course retention rates would be reviewed. So that was struck. We're leaving that there. Throughout all of the document, any discussion of success and course retention rates seems to be struck just consistently from rubrics or different places. Success and course retention rates are important. It's not everything, but it's part of a package that we have always discussed with faculty, and faculty look at their own data in those areas. It's crucial to what we do here, and particularly as we look at distance learning, if we have a faculty member who performs really well on campus and then online is having a different degree of success or retention than, say, their on-campus courses, or for that matter, their peers within their department, or both. And that means in one way or the other. It doesn't necessarily mean that their students don't do as well. Sometimes we've seen it where students are doing too good, and that is a concern as well, and it could be in one of those areas. So we have to look at course success and retention rates as part of a full picture of what faculty are doing. In letter C, the faculty version struck C, and we've left that there as well. Now, this is again something that we collaborate with the faculty on. If we, most folks start off with a course shell from a peer when they're new, and that content they work collaboratively to develop it. So we do have the right to use those learning materials, and I think Mr. Crosland's going to talk about that more in intellectual property. In E, again, this is kind of relates back to the beginning there, where we're just kind of reiterating that student completion rate, success rate, course evaluation information, including but not limited to those things, would be whether or not folks are continued to teach online. Okay, if you go down to the next page. Okay, wait, stop. I'm sorry, just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. I got moved up there. So at the very bottom, number 7A, the very last sentence, the faculty version had struck hybrid and on-campus classes, the last part of 7A. And we are leaving that there. This article is not on online courses, or I'm sorry, it's not on, it's not on online courses, it's on distance learning courses. And so, although most of our distance learning courses are online, we do have hybrids, and it's really talking about use of Canvas. And so, you know, it is interesting, I don't know about you all, to look back at these articles now that we wrote prior to COVID, and you know, we need to have course shells for all of our courses for obvious reasons. I'm hoping COVID goes away, but there's always a chance of a hurricane. So we need to be ready to be nimble and to make those moves. Okay, Susan, I'm ready for the next page now. In letter C, faculty edited their version a little bit and kind of said, I remember Clay saying that, you know, I didn't want to have to check anything over the weekend. And hey, I hear you. I would love to not check anything over the weekend too. But in letter C, what we have here, and I feel like it's a compromise, you know, faculty are required to check and respond to learning management system course messages daily, Monday through Friday, and at least once over the weekend if major assignments are due that weekend. If no major tests or assignments are due over the weekend, the faculty member is not required to check online courses over the weekend. I mean, just trying to be kind of, you know, I would read that and say, oh, well, maybe they're kind of pushing me not to have major things due over the weekend. And yeah, that is really what we would be the preference, but we're giving faculty the flexibility. If they want to have a major project due over the weekend, well, then log in just in case a student is having a struggle. Otherwise, don't do it over the weekend and have it due during the work week when the offices are open. So when students are calling, we can help them. And that's really all that's trying to say there, is to provide that a compromise for the faculty, but also the access for the students. The faculty version struck D, and so we do need faculty, if we're paying faculty members to teach classes, there should be they should be able to look at the class and know what college they're attending. And some of our online classes that are just totally shells from a publisher, you know, you could be anywhere, a student anywhere, and there's no engagement with our college. I think that this, all the time faculty have spent teaching live online, we're getting much better at this. And I feel like just naturally there'll be less of that, but it's really disheartening for students when there's you can't even find the instructor in the course. It's hard to see that person's, you know, that flavor of them. Okay, in G, the faculty had crossed off F. And, you know, faculty are required to give access to publisher content to e-learning staff for troubleshooting purposes. We're not asking anyone to give us their secret password. We don't want that. We don't want your password. We want you to help us work with the publisher to have access. They generally ask us, well, we can't give you that. The professor can tell us that we have approval to give you that access. And, you know, we're trying to help here, but again, it's always, it's the only reason, generally when we're doing this, it's at the request of the faculty member. And I don't know why I'm saying we, it's distance learning folks, but you know, they need that in order to help faculty and students. But okay, so in G, the faculty changed the number of hours from 1 to 2. And so I was thinking perhaps we could increase 2 hours with at least, and struck the line about it being outside of the Monday to Friday 8 to 5 time frame. I think that for distance learning, that outside of that time frame is important. So if we wanted to increase having some of the office hours done virtually, like off campus, we could increase that to 2. And at least one of those two would need to be outside the Monday to Friday 8 to 5 time frame to try to accommodate the needs of truly non-traditional students is what we were thinking. So I'd be interested in talking at some point with faculty about, about your thoughts on that. You can caucus about it first though and see kind of where we are if you want.
So we're now at the time that we promised Ron Brown would speak to the faculty. So Ron?
But Ron, before you start, Candy, we're obviously not going to get through this today. So that's why we're suggesting that we stay on schedule for Mr. Brown. Let him do his, what he's going to address you folks. And then I don't know what we do after that.
I think we need to agree on our next meeting time. So
Yeah. October 9.
I don't know if that's accepted. Okay, yeah, thank you, sorry. Yeah,
It was set for 1, wasn't it?
wonderful.
Friday.
Wonderful.
So I think that's all we're going to be able to get through on our proposals today, and we will respond to your U12 at the next meeting, but let's let Mr. Brown proceed, if that's okay with you.
And thank you, Jim, Melissa, and all of those who are in attendance. I often question the wisdom of being the last speaker on a Friday afternoon program. People who have attended continuing education programs know what that's like, but I don't think anybody's leaving. I appreciate that aspect of it. Many of you have noted that I have attended all of these meetings so far. My role has been to serve as an observer on behalf of the Board of Trustees, who's actually my client list. The meaningful information I give them, which is basically to inform them of the nature of the progress, what the process is, and to get their feedback concerning just what they think perhaps should be considered as some of the principles, some of the philosophies, some of the policies that they follow when they're making decisions. Their first concern has always been to make sure that we have a good faith bargaining circumstance. Several members of our board have some extensive experience with public sector collective bargaining. Some of the others have more limited experience, but they all know that it's important that we have a good faith process that is going along in a reasonable time frame. And we understand that there are protracted periods of time when some of the negotiations can take perhaps longer than we would like. And certainly there are circumstances that drive those considerations. At the end of the day, they do want to see the process continue in a fair and progressive way. They did not oppose, as you know, the certification of the UFF. They certainly don't oppose the process, but they are not a part of the negotiations at this point. They really don't get involved in this in a direct way unless there is an agreement for them to consider or there's an impasse. But they do have some points of view that they have asked me to relay to you because I think it might be important to help the understanding and to continue the progress in the negotiations. Most of these considerations have to do with the compensation package. Bob Dylan once said, money doesn't talk, it screams, and certainly this might be a case in a lot of these negotiations. It's something that's paramount in everyone's consideration. The board has a primary philosophy, and they've been pretty consistent about it, given the nature of the legislature, given the nature of the governor's office, who appoints them, in the legislature, who approves them. They have a position that basically says, look, we would love to do the best we can for all of our faculty, all of our staff, all of our administrators, but we can't spend money we don't have. And unless we know we got the money and we have some reasonable certainty that we're going to have the money, it's very difficult for us to say, all right, go ahead and set up a schedule of expenditures based on that expectation. Basically, they look at it and say, well, we know what we have. We would be glad to talk with you about trying to spend what we have. But if we don't have it, it's hard for us to do that. Joe Pickens mentioned in his presentation today the travails of uncertainty. I've always believed uncertainty is one of the basic driving forces in a lot of activities, and people don't like it. It causes a lot of stress when people can't have some reasonable certainty as to what's going to happen, what the outcomes are going to be. And certainly, like I said, in these times, with this legislature, the governor, the COVID situation, the uncertainties of state income, noises, talking about reductions in next year's budget, actual set-asides in this year's budget of 6%. Even though the college has had a non-recurring appropriation that helps soften some of that, it's still a problem. But from the standpoint of the board, they're going to want to know that there's some degree of certainty that the money's going to be there. And as long as these situations continue, as long as these current circumstances continue, it's probably going to be where they are. They're going to be open to what somebody might have to present as a proposal. Certainly, the management team has spent a lot of time trying to talk to the board about advancing certain types of compensation packages in various degrees. It has been a stress. The board still comes back to their basic principle of look. We don't have it, how are we going to give it to everybody? This poses some problems for a lot of types of activities, at least for the time being. We'd all love to have cost of living increases. We'd all love to have step increases. We'd all love to have some kind of knowledge that from year to year we might have some predictable increases. But if the money's not there, the question is, how do you do that? And as I said, they remain open to the prospects of what can be done, but it's going to have to be meeting the criteria that they have that says, look, how do we pay for this without going into some type of financial stress? As you may know, the college is required to keep a certain amount of reserves by state law. As you also know, not every dollar the college receives from the legislative process is available for things like salaries. And it's restricted. And that's when they talk about restricted funds in the college report, that's what they're talking about. We can't predict future reoccurring funding. We've been able to get some of that in the past. The legislature's appropriated sometimes in the past, and the governor's vetoed. This year, like I said, we have some. There's no guarantee we'll have some next year. So all I'm telling you is that we're trying to make the board aware of what the process is, what the progress is, what the terms and conditions are that people are talking about. But we just want you to know that at the end of the day, they're very, very concerned as to how we can, provide any type of compensation package beyond what we know we have available to us. We're open to suggestions. If somebody's got a plan that can meet the requirements of law, they'll be glad to listen to it. But at the end of the day, that's where they are. I hope this helps some. I know we're going to be getting into that in future meetings. The faculty is important to the trustees. I know the trustees have tried many, many times to make sure the faculty stay employed. We don't want to do any kind of staff reductions. They've been able to, I think, to avoid that by and large. Other colleges have not been so fortunate. That's not a place they want to go. At the same time, they want to make sure they fulfill their fiduciary obligation to the college and making sure that the finances of the college remain solid. And fortunately, we've been able to do that so far. But again, when you start to make your considerations for the compensation part of this, please keep those things in mind. The board remains open. They're going to listen. But there's some challenges we have to meet, and those are what I appreciate your time with this. If anybody has a question, we try to answer it. But again, we're not in the negotiation process. My job today is just to kind of tell you where the board is on these types of things, because they have been approached. They did get a letter, obviously, from one of the faculty members, and acknowledged the receipt of that. And they did authorize me to come before you today and to let you know where they are with this basic philosophical policy viewpoint. So I hope that helps, and look forward to working with you.
Okay, so we are a little past 4, so our official session is to wind down. I just want to say we look forward to your future presentations on your proposals, and this is the kind of process we'd like to see, where you walk us through the reasoning. We'll have more questions next time, but this is what we would have. This is what we want. So let's go forward and continue to talk about issues and move this forward. We're absolutely ready to negotiate in good faith, and I can tell today we have some progress. So I think this is a good session. We will meet again. We all agreed Friday, October 9th, 1 to 4. you want to set more dates, because we would be happy to meet more often and possibly even meet evenings and weekends to move this forward.
I believe we can, in talking to our team, that we do have available October 23, 2 weeks from now. Yeah,
So is that 1 to 4 again?
Yeah, we have that, that's 2 to 4.
Anyone have a issue with that on my team? I don't. Let's accept that, but if your team comes up with more times, we would also entertain weekly, meeting a little bit more and dedicating some time to these topics.
Okay, well, you can get in touch with me about that.
Okay, so we'll see you on the 9th.
Thank you. Adam, we're